Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I've received over the past 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, your workout program, supplements you're taking, not taking, considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com. Or you can also DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. All right, so let's get started with this week's No Filter Q&A with question number 1. Hi, Nick. Is it better to consume 6 smaller meals or 3 larger meals throughout the day if I want to build muscle and lean out? You know, the generic response that you're going to find online and for most fitness enthusiasts or fitness experts is that you should have 6 small meals throughout the day. And the reason for that they give anyways is because it helps boost your metabolism and it helps feed your body protein constantly. And it keeps you feeling your energy level stable throughout the day. Now, I will agree with the energy level stable throughout the day. And I'm personally a huge advocate of having smaller meals throughout the day. And it's something that I practice myself and I usually implement into most, but not all of my clients' nutritional plans. But the main reason I like to consume 6, well, myself personally, I consume 8 meals a day, but why I like smaller, more frequent meals is because I find that when you have a larger meal, it really makes you feel very lethargic right afterwards. Even if you're having a meal that's full of healthy fats, lean proteins, complex carbs, all those calories coming into your body all at once, it puts a lot of stress on your digestive tract. And so now your body has to break all that food down and all those nutrients. So to me, what I find works best is to just have smaller meals throughout the day, because again, yes, that does keep energy levels stable. It also keeps your blood sugar levels stable throughout the day. It doesn't have your insulin levels spiking up and down, crashing because you have a large meal and then you fast for, 4 or 5 hours, and then you have another large meal, and then you fast for 8 hours. And so I don't recommend doing that. But I do find having those smaller, more frequent meals work, but it has nothing to do with boosting your metabolism. And honestly, it has nothing to do with building more muscle. I still think someone could build quite a bit of muscle if they were doing the 3 standard large meals a day. Yes, I think someone could build muscle and still lose fat. I don't think that would affect either. However, I do think it would affect how you feel. You'd feel more lethargic, as I mentioned, right? You might feel like a little bit more irritable throughout the day because your blood sugar levels are going up and down, and that could affect your workouts. So therefore, you could be weaker in the gym. So in that sense, that could affect how much muscle you could put on, because if you're not lifting as much in the gym or you're not training as intensely, you're not going to build as much muscle, right? Same thing when you do your cardio. You're not going to be burning as much fat because you're not going to be giving it your all because you're tired. So these are general rules of why I recommend doing more smaller meals throughout the day as opposed to 3 larger meals. But honestly, if your schedule only permits you to have 3 or 4 meals throughout the day, okay, do it. But in that case, what I usually recommend is have 3 regular meals and maybe throw in 2 protein shakes, because protein shakes are easy. You can put them in a shaker cup and just drink them. So I do find that it's better to consume more frequent smaller meals throughout the day. And don't forget too, when you have a large meal, your body can only absorb so much nutrients at one time. So if you're trying to get in, let's say 300 grams of protein in a day, right? Let's just throw that number out there. So if you're doing 6 meals, that's 50 grams of protein per meal. If you condense that down to, let's say 3 meals, all of a sudden, you're looking at what, 75, 80 grams of protein per meal, right? That's a little too much. Your body can't take in that much protein in one sitting. So that's why it's best to kind of space it out throughout the day. But again, this is a very individual based question, because I do have a few clients that I work with that I have them doing 4 to 5 meals a day. I have some people like myself that I have doing 8 meals a day. But what I find works for most people is staying within that 5 to 6 meal range throughout the day. And again, these are not big meals. We're talking like a third of a cup of oats and maybe 25 grams of protein powder. And then we have, let's say, 2 slices of Ezekiel bread and 1 tablespoon of natural peanut butter. So they're not massive meals. And I find that works for most people. But again, you have to find what works with you, for you, works with your lifestyle, works with your goals. But I will tell you this, when it comes to building muscle and losing fat, I'm not sold on the ideology that smaller, more frequent meals will allow you to build muscle faster and lose fat more quickly. No, I still think you could do that on 3 standard meals. It's just something that I would not advise. All right, next question. Nick, I read that I'm supposed to consume 2 liters of water each day. I have 2 questions though. Does coffee count, as I consume about 5 cups each day? And second question, is there anything I can add to the water to make it more enjoyable to drink? Are lemons okay? Coffee does not count. Actually, coffee acts more like a diuretic. So for every cup of coffee you have, you should have 1 cup of water, because coffee has the opposite effect. So coffee's like pop. You know, pop does not count as water, right? So just because you're putting water into your coffee, I would not count that as part of your 2 liters that you're supposed to consume in one day. So it's the opposite. So for my coffee drinkers, I usually have, like, say if I have someone who's drinking 3 cups of coffee a day, I'll say, okay, well, you're going to add in 3 more cups of water to make up for those 3 cups of coffee. So that's your question with coffee. To make water more enjoyable, yeah, there's a few things you could do. There's a product I use. I constantly plug it in on my Instagram. It's called Extend. It's a BCA product. They have 2 different versions. They have one version that is sweetened with sucralose, and they have another version that is sweetened with stevia. So if you're someone who's against consuming sucralose, or you just don't want to have sucralose in your diet, you can consume the natural version, which is sweetened with stevia. I've had both. I personally don't mind a little bit of sucralose in my diet. I prefer the sucralose version because it tastes better. The stevia version tastes like shit. It really does. It doesn't taste good at all. But you do have that option. And the nice thing about the product Extend is that it is a BCA product, so you're getting all your branched chain amino acids. So that's a really good, you know, you throw 1 or 2 scoops into like a big jug of water and have that throughout the day. Crystal Light's another good option. They have those Mio sport drinks, which are like 5 calories for like 5 droplets. Those are a good option as well. They add a little bit of flavor. So you can do that, right? I mean, I like the Extend personally because you're getting all your branched chain amino acids. So for me, I personally recommend to my clients to use that product. It's called Extend. I'll put a link in the description below for people to find it, but I like using that. As far as lemon water is concerned, you know, what's funny, as I used to consume lemon water all the time. I like 2 liters a day. I'd easily 3 liters a day. I'd throw lemons into my jug of water. But then my client, who was also my dentist at the time, advised me to stop doing that because the lemon is very acidic and it's bad for your teeth, right? Bad for your gums. So he told me you got to stop doing that. So I stopped doing it years ago and haven't looked back. So I know a lot of people like to put lemon in their water. I think every once in a while it's fine, but he told me not to do it at all. So I don't do lemon in the water. I'm sure there are some health benefits for that, but I like to have healthy teeth too at the same time. So that's the reason why I don't do lemon in water. But yeah, I'd recommend the Extend product. Like I said, it's sweetened in sucralose, and there's also a version sweetened in stevia, so you can use one or the other. And I think a tub of it's like $80 Canadian. Sometimes you can find it on sale if you shop around websites online. But that jug usually lasts me for like 2 months. So money well spent, and it makes it much easier to drink water. All right, next question. Hi, Nick. I delivered my son 3 months ago. During my pregnancy, I put on over 70 pounds and was unable to work out for 3 weeks prior to my delivery date due to potential complications. I returned to the gym last week, but both my strength and recovery are really down. I feel like I've lost all my muscle. Is there anything I can do to fast track my results more quickly to get back to where I was before I got pregnant? I wouldn't fast track your results. What I would do, and this is what I told a lot of my clients to do, I had a lot of clients during COVID who didn't work out at all. And I said the same thing. I said, those first few weeks, God, those first few months back in the gym, it's going to be hard. It's going to be like starting from square one again, especially for someone like yourself who's pregnant, you put on 70 pounds. I imagine that's a lot of pressure on your joints, on your tendons. So you're coming back at a disadvantage because now you've got to kind of work through all those aches and pains. Whereas someone who just took time off the gym for a few months and maybe put on a little bit of weight, now they're back, it might be a little bit easier for them to transition back into the weightlifting again. But in your case, what I'd recommend, slow and steady. There's no reason to rush it. You will get back to where you were, but why rush it? Because when you rush, this is another thing I tell my clients, when you rush yourself to get back or get results, you know, I want to put on 30 pounds of muscle, or I want to lose 30 pounds of fat. When you go too extreme, this is when injuries happen. And I've seen it time and time again. I've seen people try to rush back into the gym, get back on a crash course diet plan or whatever it is, just to get down to the weight they were before or put their muscle back on. And 9 times out of 10, they get injured. Something happens, there's a setback. So you don't want to go too much too soon. And I know that's difficult, but trust me when I tell you, it does not work. The longest I ever took off the gym was 6 weeks. And that's when I had my appendix taken out back. I think it was in 2020. It was around August 2020. And I couldn't train for 6 weeks. I was still able to train clients, but I couldn't train myself. So when I came back, I really listened to my body. I'm someone who likes to train 6 days a week. My first week back in the gym, I trained 3 days a week. Then the second week, I added a 4th day. And I stayed there for a few weeks. And then I said, okay, after a month of training, I feel I can do 5 days. And I built my way back up to 6 days slowly. It was difficult. Of course, I wasn't lifting the same weights I was 6 weeks prior, but I got back there eventually. It took some time. It took about 2 months, but I was back to where I was. And my physique, honestly, my physique came back to where it was. It probably even looked better because I had that time off from the gym. My body probably needed that time off from the gym. So I know it's discouraging to come back and be like, oh man, I'm not nearly as strong as I used to be, but trust me, don't push it. Don't try to do some crazy, for example, like an anabolic steroid cycle, or go on this crazy fasting diet where you're only drinking like lemon water all day and having bouillon cubes and I don't know, these crazy fad diets that people do these days. Don't do any of that shit. Just go back to what you were doing originally that helped you get those results and follow that plan. I promise you that if that plan worked for you before, it's going to work for you again. Yeah, you might need to tweak it a little bit because now you're 1 year older, but it will work. The fundamentals always work. Get back to the basic exercises, stick to your nutritional plan, the results will come. Hey, Nick, I'm going on vacation for 4 weeks and won't have access to any gyms. How much muscle should I expect to lose during this time? And should I still consume the same amount of calories, even though I won't be working out? 4 weeks off the gym, you probably won't lose much muscle at all. You might lose 3 or 4 pounds of muscle, but chances are that you're not going to really lose any. As long as your nutrition is in check. Should you be consuming as many calories as you would if you were exercising every day? Probably not. I would scale back a little bit. If it were me, I'd probably cut off 1 or 2 meals. I'd still keep my protein high though, because don't forget, muscle requires protein, right? So if you start taking out too much protein, yes, you're going to lose muscle. So you want to make sure that you are consuming protein. Do you need as much as when you were training? No, there's no reason to. I mean, again, if you're consuming extra calories, it will get stored as body fat. So if you're not exercising, you don't want to be in a caloric surplus and put on unwanted weight. So again, my recommendation, let's say you're someone who consumes 6 meals a day, maybe take those 6 meals back to 4 meals, cut out 2 of those meals. You're probably not going to be as hungry. If I go back to my appendix story just now, I remember when I wasn't working out, I was never hungry. I could go the whole day without eating. But I didn't because I didn't want to lose any more muscle. So I wanted to make sure that I could maintain the muscle that I have. So I was making sure I was eating at least 5 meals a day, getting in my protein. And then when I started training again, I brought my meals back up to 7 or 8 meals. But when I wasn't training, I was getting away with 4 or 5 meals. And I honestly, again, 6 weeks off, I probably lost 3 or 4 pounds of muscle and I put it back on 2 months, no problem. So 4 weeks, I don't think you'll lose much. Just make sure your nutrition is in check. Make sure your protein levels are high. A good rule of thumb, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if you're 200 pounds, just make sure you're getting in 200 grams of protein. If you're not exercising, what I would do in that case, I would take that 200 and I just subtract 50 off there, 150 grams of protein, because you're not training right now. There's no reason to have that much protein. So, and that should be fine. Okay. I know the general rule of thumb is 1.5 grams of protein per body weight. Myself personally, I think that's a little too high. I think it puts a little too much stress on the kidneys. So I usually advise my clients to go 1 gram per pound of body weight when they're training with weights. I find that's more than enough for a natural lifter. Okay. Nick, do I need to train to failure on every set? I'm trying to add on as much muscle as possible over the next 3 months. I would not recommend training to failure on every single set. I would recommend training to failure on the last set of an exercise, but not on every set. First, you have to remember, when you start a new exercise, you have to do a warm-up set, right? This goes without saying. You want to do a warm-up set. And I do a warm-up set for every new exercise I do during a workout. So if I start my chest workout with a low incline barbell press, I'll start with a quick warm-up set, which is 45 a side, which is very light for me. And then when I move on to my flat barbell press, I'll do the same thing. Even though I've warmed up in the gym, I've already done 4 or 5 sets of an incline barbell press. Now I'm doing a different angle. It's going to target a different area of my chest. I'm going to start light again and build my way back up. We call that pyramiding the weight up, right? Increasing your weight, decreasing your reps with each ascending round. But I wouldn't recommend going to failure on every single set, because then you risk tearing a tendon, injuring one of your joints, dislocating a shoulder. Like I said, you could tear a pec, you could tear a quad. So depending on the muscle belly you're working. So I would not advise you to do that. Good rule of thumb I usually tell my clients is try to take it to about 80% to failure. So it should go, your sets, they should be hard. They should be intense. Don't get me wrong. You don't want to do some light set that you could easily do 40 reps with. Like if your rep range is, let's say 10 to 15 and you're on set number 3 and you're trying to get 12 reps, those last 2 reps should be a struggle. But they shouldn't be to the point where, oh my God, I'm gassed. I have to pass out on the floor now because I just went above and beyond and went all out. No. So I always tell people to take it to about 80% of their maximum intensity, which means they could probably do maybe 1 or 2 more reps, but don't take it to true failure. And then in the final set of the exercise, that's the set to take it to failure. Another good way, if you want to really drain and deplete a muscle when you're training it, is throw in some drop sets. For example, I've talked about this before. When I train my legs, my last set of barbell back squats are 345s a side, which is 315 pounds. I know I could squat more than 315 pounds, but at my age, and I feel like there's no reason to do that. Why risk injury? I know I can get 10 reps with perfect form, so why risk going heavier? I don't need to. I get great results on that weight with that number of reps. But instead of increasing the weight, what I'll do is I'll do a drop set. So I'll take off, say I'll do those 10 reps with the 345s. Immediately I'll strip a plate from each side. So there's 2 45s on each side, and I'll do 10 reps again. And I'll strip a plate again. So there's 1 45 on a side and do 10 reps again. So that's what we call a triple drop set. And that way I'm actually preserving my joints, and I'm taking a lot of strain off my lumbar region and my tendons. And I'm keeping constant tension on the muscle bellies. So I'm stimulating muscle growth without having to go ridiculously heavy. Okay, it's all about training smarter, not harder, right? So, and don't get me wrong, that set's pretty tired. When I've done a triple drop set, that's 30 reps in a row. Like it's tough, but where it hurts is my muscles. My joints are fine. My tendons are fine. My lower back's fine. My hamstrings, my quads, and my glutes, after a triple drop set of squats, not fine. They're sore, but they recover, and that's how they grow. So lifting heavier is not always the answer. Taking things to failure is not always the answer. Train with high intensity, but don't kill yourself in the gym. Okay. Hey, Nick, why are all powerlifters so fat? I've been watching a few at my gym and the competitors on TV. Why do they all have bellies? I don't know if it's fair to say that all powerlifters are fat, but I can agree with you that most powerlifters I've seen as well are typically not in the best of shape. They're not aesthetics that I would strive to obtain. One of the reasons, though, I believe that powerlifters, I don't want to say powerlifters are fat, but when you compare a powerlifter with, let's say, a bodybuilder or a fitness competitor and bodybuilder are training for aesthetics, right? A powerlifter is training purely for raw power strength. So their objective is to lift the weight up and down, whether that be in a 1 rep max or 3 reps, but lift as heavy as possible. Whereas a bodybuilder, fitness competitor, that's not the goal. When you're a bodybuilder, you're going on stage, the judges are judging you purely on how you look. Same as a fitness competitor. If you're a physique competitor, bikini, figure, men's physique, whatever, or if you're just an average person who's just trying to put on muscle and you're looking in the mirror to see how you look like. It doesn't matter how much you squat or how much you bench, it's irrelevant. You're being judged purely on your physique, and if you're not a competitor, you're judging your own physique. So the weight's irrelevant, right? A powerlifter, however, they always want to increase their weight. The heavier, the better. That's their sport. That's how they get better at their sport. To do that, they need to add on a lot of weight. And some of that, when I say weight, I don't mean weight onto the bar. I mean weight onto themselves. And to add on a lot of weight, you need to be in a caloric surplus, which means you need to get tons and tons of calories in it. And I'm not talking like a couple thousand. Like some of these strongmen, they consume 10,000 plus calories a day. And the problem is, if you're trying to consume even 8,000 calories a day, that's very hard to do on clean food. Good luck doing that on chicken and rice. You know how much bloody chicken and rice you're going to have to consume to get 8,000, 10,000 plus calories a day? So what they do is they have a lot of what we call dirty foods, pizza, burger, fries, because those foods are very calorically dense. So it doesn't take much to get 5,000 calories if you have a whole pizza, right? And a lot of these guys will just put that down for lunch, because again, their main objective is to get as much calories in as possible to put on as much weight as they can onto their body, both good and bad weight, so that they can lift the weight that they're lifting. And that's why you see in a lot of these strongman competitions and the power lifters, they don't have the greatest aesthetics, but that's not their goal. That's not their sport. Do I think that's healthy? No, I don't think it's healthy at all. They look like they're about to have heart attacks. Most of these guys are in their 30s, but they look like they're in their 50s, because they're just not really taking care of their bodies. So I'm not a big fan of powerlifting personally. I'm not going to say that all powerlifters are fat, though, because I believe there are a few powerlifters out there who are in fairly good shape. Ronnie Coleman was a powerlifter before he became a bodybuilder, and he had looked fantastic still. Again, he's a genetic freak, though, but even he was eating like pizza, burgers, and all that stuff when he was a powerlifter. Because again, the objective is to just lift as much weight as possible. And to do that, you yourself need to be heavy. So it's just get as much calories as you can in as possible. Aesthetics don't matter when you're a powerlifter. They're irrelevant. Just like weight is irrelevant when you're a bodybuilder, a fitness competitor, or just everyday person who is training for aesthetics. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with training for aesthetics. A little bit of vanity is okay. It's okay to be a little bit of vain. If that's your motivating factor to get to the gym, so be it. I've always said to my clients, that's a short-term goal, though. You also want to have a long-term goal. Okay. So if aesthetics are getting you into the gym, great, but there's got to be some other motivating factor. So whether that's just living a longer, healthier life, feeling better, having more energy throughout the day, but it can't just be, I want to have a six-pack and big biceps, or I want to have perky glutes. Okay, it can't be any of that. So that's a good short-term goal, but you also have to have a long-term goal. So again, powerlifters, they're not all fat, but I would say, yeah, I agree with you that the majority of them are not in the best of shape. But again, that's not their sport. That's not their goal. And that's why you see the way they look. Hi, Nick. Do you recommend your clients train lighter when they are trying to cut weight? No, I don't. If anything, when you're trying to cut weight, try to keep your weights as close to what you were lifting before you were trying to cut weight. So for example, if you're doing, let's say, a off-season plan, which is trying to put on some weight, and you're okay with putting on a little bit of fat as you put on that weight, so you're going into somewhat of a caloric surplus, and you're lifting fairly heavy, and then it comes spring and you want to cut, let's say, 15 pounds before the summer season. In that case, you start reducing your calories, and you have to start really focusing on your diet. This is when your diet really has to be tied in. The reason I say that is because a lot of people, what happens is when they start to reduce their calories up here mentally, they say, well, now I'm consuming, let's say, 300 calories less a day, so I should be lifting lighter in the gym. Not necessarily. You'd be surprised. For a lot of contests I used to prep for, my weights would actually go up on less food. Go figure. It just, and there was really no rhyme or reason. It just started to happen. So you don't necessarily need to have a lot of calories to consume weight. I know this kind of contradicts what I was just saying about the powerlifters, but you don't want to start dropping your weight drastically just because your calories are being reduced. Now, obviously, if you have to, do it, but it's never a good sign if your weights are dropping in the gym. That's usually a sign that you're losing muscle. So if you're losing body fat, the weights that you were lifting before you started your diet really shouldn't go down that much. I work with a lot of people online for contest prep, and very rarely do I have someone say, oh, my weights are going down drastically throughout the week. Maybe 1 or 2 weeks out from a show, the weights start to go down because they're tired, they're depleted. At that point, their body fat levels are very low. But if you're someone who's just training to get ready for the beach, you want to lose a few pounds before the summer, your weight shouldn't drop just because you're dropping your calories. So if your weights in the gym are going down because you're starting to reduce calories in your diet, there's something wrong with your diet. You're reducing calories from the wrong macronutrient. Okay. And that's, again, where it comes into working with an experienced coach who can help guide you so that when you are dieting, you make sure that what you're losing is fat and not muscle. As I've said before, anyone can lose weight. Losing weight is easy. Losing weight is not challenging at all. But losing fat while preserving muscle, completely different ballgame. Okay, so that's where you have to really strategize and say, okay, how can I preserve as much muscle as possible while losing as much fat as possible? And that's where it comes down to really focusing on, okay, macronutrient rotations, Where do I need to implement my healthy fats versus my complex carbs? How high should I go on my protein levels? These are all things you have to look at when you're putting your nutritional plan together. So paying close attention to your micronutrients. Okay. So to answer that question, if you are dieting, your weights in the gym should not go down. And if they are going down, there's something wrong with your diet. Okay. Nick, is creatine safe to take? My son is 16 years old and wants to start taking it for the gym. Yeah, creatine is perfectly safe to take. It's probably one of the few supplements, over-the-counter supplements, that actually works. I used to take creatine when I was a teenager. I did notice that it helped strength, for sure. It helped my strength in the gym. For the reason is creatine helps load water, so it helps load more water to your muscle belly. So it almost gives you like that insulation. So when you're lifting weights, just fills up your glycogen storages more easily. So it's almost like after so you have like a big like Thanksgiving dinner, you go back to the gym the next day. Yeah, you're tired after the Thanksgiving dinner, but you go back to the gym and you're like, man, this amazing pump. I get a lot of people who have a cheat meal that have a couple slices of pizza. The next day they come in, their strength's gone up, and that's just the extra carbohydrates and the extra water in the muscles. So creatine does the same thing without all those calories. The one thing I don't like about creatine is it makes you hold water. And so I learned that from a young age. I think it was about 17, and I stopped using creatine because every time I had my shirt off, I just looked very puffy, and it wasn't fat. It was water. I can tell the difference between fat and water. And it was just, I was holding water weight with it. So yes, I was stronger in the gym, but I didn't like it because I didn't like the way it made me look. I didn't like the way it made me feel. It made me feel kind of bloated. So I got rid of it. I haven't used creatine in 20 years, but it does work. It definitely will make you stronger in the gym, which in a sense will help you build more muscle. Just remember, creatine, it's best to cycle it on and off. So you don't want to stay on creatine year round. Good rule of thumb that I used to use when I was using creatine, I would go 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. Again, it's not dangerous, but with anything, you shouldn't be on it year round. So that's why I recommend, even like vitamins, minerals, I usually rotate those as well. Even my protein sources and my carbohydrate sources from my diet, I rotate. In the winter, I do fish. In the summer, I do white meat. You know, I'll do brown rice and quinoa during the summer, and I'll do yams and sweet potatoes during the winter. So I mix up my macronutrient sources all the time as well. So creatine safe. It's not going to have any adverse side effects. It's legal. It's cheap. And that's another thing to remember too. Be careful when you are purchasing creatine. If you are going to buy creatine, just buy creatine monohydrate. You're going to see a lot of fancy labels out there, and you see creatine selling for like $60. Honestly, guys, creatine, don't pay more than $20 for a tub this big. It should not be more than $20. And also stay away from any mixes with creatine. So any of these shakes that have sugar. Creatine monohydrate is all you need, which is just pure creatine. So you don't need anything added to that, and that'll work just well. I mean, you'll notice for sure, if you take creatine, you will notice that your strength goes up. It's not going to go up significantly, but you will notice somewhat of a difference. It's not going to be the same thing as if you were to go on an anabolic steroid cycle, but yes, you will notice that your strength does go up in the gym. But if you're like me, you might also notice that you retain a little bit additional fluid, and you might not like that feeling. Then again, you might not retain any, but for me and for a lot of people I've worked with, they've felt the same way, and they've said, I don't like the way I look or feel when I'm on creatine, so they get rid of it, and the water drops, and then their muscle bellies go back to looking hard and lean. And yeah, they might not be as strong in the gym, but they like the way that they look much better. So being off creatine versus on, it's more of like a personal choice, what your goal is. I guess if you're a power lifter, you'd want to be on creatine because you don't care what you look like. Okay. Hi, Nick. Do I have to bench, squat, and deadlift regularly in order to build muscle? My friend who trains 6 times a week told me all 3 of these exercises are essential when it comes to building muscle. I don't believe those 3 exercises are essential when it comes to building muscle. I think all 3 of those exercises are great exercises to do because they allow you to work multiple muscle groups at the same time. You exert more energy, thus burning more calories. And because you're putting so much stress onto your body while performing those 3 particular movements, in a sense, you are going to actually build or recruit more muscle fibers to those areas that you're working. But I don't think it's necessary. I don't think if you didn't do those exercises, you wouldn't build muscle. In fact, I know that because there's professional bodybuilders out there that don't squat, don't deadlift, and don't bench, and they've got fantastic physiques. So I don't think that rule applies to everyone. You mentioned those 3 exercises. I only do 2 of those 3 exercises, which is the barbell back squats and barbell bench press. I personally don't deadlift at all. I find deadlifting, and this is again, deadlifting for me, I find it's a higher risk to benefit ratio. And I've explained in the past why I don't deadlift. Now, I don't tell other people don't deadlift. I just don't deadlift. And I never deadlifted while I used to compete in bodybuilding, and I found that it didn't negatively impact my physique whatsoever. I used to do, and I still do to this day, hyper extensions, which work the lower back. So I know, you've heard the bread and butter, the deadlift, the squat, and the bench press. Again, I think those are great exercises, but I think it's very old school mentality to say you have to deadlift, you have to squat, you have to bench press. Everyone's different. Everyone has their own physical limitations. Some people have longer limbs than others. Some people have shorter muscle belly insertions than others. So you really have to look at your physique, assess your physique, and say, okay, and then while you're doing it, does this feel right? There's a lot of guys that when they bench press, they don't feel anything in their chest and they feel it all in their delts. And just the way that they're designed genetically, their body structure, they're just not designed to bench press. They might get more out of doing a hammer machine press or a dumbbell press. So that's where you have to assess your physique and really pay attention to your body while you're performing an exercise. Say, am I feeling this in the right spot? And chances are, if you're doing it correctly and you're still not feeling it where you should be feeling it, or something's uncomfortable, that's not the exercise for you. I have a lot of clients I work with where I don't have them doing barbell squats, but I'll have them doing barbell front squats. So I don't have them doing barbell back squats, but I will have them doing a front squat. I'll have some people who I don't have doing regular barbell deadlifts, but like I said, I'll have them doing hyperextension deadlifts, or I'll have them doing trap bar deadlifts. So you really have to find what works for you as an individual and then stick with that plan. So to answer that question, no, I don't think it's essential to do barbell squats and do deadlifts and do barbell bench press in order to build muscle. I think those are great exercises if you are able to do them, but I don't think they're necessary, okay, to build a great foundation. All right, last question. Hi, Nick. Should I be following a low-fat diet if I'm trying to stay lean? Absolutely not. This is something I fell victim to in my earlier years, especially when I was in I would say from 18 to 25. I barely had any fats in my diet. As I grew up in the decade of fats are bad, and if you're trying to build muscle, it's all about protein and carbs. And what I've learned over the years from a lot of trial and error is that when you incorporate good, healthy fats into your diet, fats keep you feeling fuller for a longer period of time. So you tend to eat less when you consume fats. We don't overeat. Whereas carbohydrates, on the other hand, you'll ever notice when you have carbs, let's say you go for sushi, you have white rice and you have 3 sushi rolls, and chances are half an hour later, you're hungry again. You want more because carbohydrates, and again, even if they're complex carbohydrates, you run the risk of fluctuating blood sugar levels, dropping your insulin levels, and that's going to make you feel hungry very quickly. So fats slow down the digestion. So that's why I like to incorporate fats, not in every meal, but I like to have fats in at least every second meal when I'm designing nutritional plans. So if I'm doing someone's nutritional plan and I give them, let's say, those 6 meals, I'll put fats in 3 to 4 of those meals throughout the day. And I'll usually put the fats towards the later part of the day, so people don't tend to binge at night when they're home and they're resting, because that's very common, right? People go home at night, they're watching Netflix, and they're sitting there and they start eating and eating. So I like to put fats towards the end of the day because that allows people to feel fuller, so they're less likely to eat. People tend to sleep better too when they have fats towards the end of the day. These are the still things I've learned over the years from helping people with their nutritional plans, and what I've learned over the years from trial and error doing these nutritional plans on myself. But the ideology of them having these low-fat diets, it's garbage. I'm not going to tell you to do a ketosis diet, but at the same time, low-fat is not a good way to go either. And I find when you do a low-fat diet, you're always hungry. I've done low-fat diets. I used to do them for shows when I first started competing. I'd follow low-fat diets. They didn't work well for me. What did work well is when I started incorporating more healthy fats, omega-3 eggs, extra virgin olive oil, almond butter, natural peanut butter, cashew butter, avocados, that type of stuff really, salmon, that type of stuff really made me feel fuller, made me feel better, allowed me to think more clearly, and I was able to lose fat more efficiently because I wasn't overeating the carbohydrates. So I don't advise anyone to follow a low-fat diet. I always find a moderate fat, moderate carbs, high protein diet works best if your goal is to build muscle and lose fat. So low fat diets, don't do them. They don't work well, guys. Never have, never will. Anyway, that is it. Is that it? That is it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday evening. As a reminder, if you do have any questions related to your diet, training, or supplementation, please feel free to email me those questions, nick@foreverfitperformance.com. You can also DM me your questions on my Instagram @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.